Previously on the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
He said, Goodell's a liar and I don't care what happens to me. And then he got suspended and then a year later he got fired. And every time I hear a Goodell talk, all I hear is he's a big liar. I think he's a liar. No one's going to fire me. This is our show. So I'm going to tell you Goodell's a liar.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
Skip.
Hey, what's up?
Same old stuff. What's up with you?
I feel like the weeks go by and we don't talk and there's so much stuff to talk about. When we start recording, I forget everything I want to talk about.
Well, I write everything down. I thought you were doing that too. Didn't you say you had a notebook and you write things down?
I started to, but, doesn't always work out how you planned.
Well, I've got a list of things that I normally would have texted you during the week.
Yeah.
But didn't because I was waiting for today to tell you about them.
Sure.
So I guess we do have to do a Super Bowl recap.
Sure. How did you like the game?
Well, I hated the game because I hated the outcome because I hate the Patriots. Everyone's debating now whether the Patriots won that game or the Falcons lost that game.
Well, it's both.
My official position is the Falcons blew it. The Falcons choked.
I mean, there's no doubt that they choked.
You don't have a 25-point lead with 17 minutes to go and lose.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's ever happened. And I'm not talking just Super Bowls. I'm talking about in any NFL game ever.
Well, there has been bigger comebacks. The Bills over the Oilers. You remember that game? They were down like by 20 something at the half.
Okay.
Or more. So,
Forgot
but yeah,
about
it's definitely a huge comeback. There's no doubt. I mean, did the Falcons blow it? Of course they did.
They blew it 100%.
But every single thing that the Falcons did that every time they screwed up, and there was many, right? So there was the first strip sack, which is not necessarily them blowing it, but, Patriots making a good play. And then really I don't have to tell you, and I don't even have to tell the listeners, anybody who watches the game understands that the game turned on two plays, right?
The play where they lost 12 yards.
Exactly. So, all they have to do is run the ball and kick a field goal, and probably the game's over. Instead, they run a pass play. He gets sacked. Then they run another play, holding. They're out of field goal range. Patriots get the ball back. That sequence is what changed everything, right?
Right. And so it was bad play calling, but also if you're Matt Ryan and you see that there's no one to throw to, just throw it away.
I know. It's not, they defended their coaching staff defended the play call of the pass. And you know what? I mean, not that I agree with it. I mean, I wouldn't have done that, but they wanted to be true to themselves. They ran the plays that they did all year. They did what got them there, which was throwing the ball. And, they ran on first down. They got stuffed, so they decided to throw. But he has to be aware that he cannot get sacked under any circumstances, right? That's like job one. You don't get sacked.
Worst case scenario.
I mean, that whole sequence was worst case scenario. But so as much as the Falcons screwed up by those plays, they were still winning by 8 points with 4 minutes left in the game, right? The Patriots earned everything that they got, in all the scores. I mean, they scored every single time they got the ball in the fourth quarter. They scored 5 times in the fourth quarter, right? I mean, it's unheard of. So,
yeah. Which I guess we shouldn't be surprised because, the Falcons defense wasn't exactly the greatest defense on the planet all season long.
It looked good in the first half.
It looked great in the first half. It looked great in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah. They were on the field too long.
If you look at the scores of their games in the regular season, they always put up 40-something points, but they usually give up quite a bunch as well.
Yeah. I mean, their defense was exhausted. I'm sure it was exhausted. They were on the field the whole fourth quarter. They were on the field the whole game. Even at the half, when the Patriots were down by, I don't know what the score was, they showed the time of possession. The Patriots had more time of possession. They had run more. The Patriots ran more than double the offensive plays in the game. So the Falcons defense was completely out of gas. They had
How is
nothing
that even
left.
Possible?
Because they scored on a pick six, and then there was also another fumble. So they didn't have the ball, and when the Falcons scored, they scored quickly also, right? The first drive they just went right down the field in big chunks of yards every time. So they were out of gas, and Patriots. I mean, what's amazing is that they had two-point conversion plays like in their pocket ready to go, right?
Yeah.
After they used the first one, which was like Patriots fans, I'm sure if you talk to Neil, he'll tell you he's seen that play before. Patriots fans call it online this week. I've called it the Kevin Falk play because it's a play that they've run before when he was a running back like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had another 2-point conversion play ready to go. And then, of course, when the coin was flipped and the Patriots got the ball, you knew the game was over.
Yeah, it's the coin flip thing. I don't like the overtime rules in the NFL.
I knew you were going to talk. I knew you were
Yeah,
gonna
both
say
teams should get a chance to score.
that. So what do you think the rules should be?
Well, I mean, forget the clock.
Yeah.
Whatever team runs their plays, so Patriots run their plays and they score. Either they get a field goal or a touchdown or whatever.
Then the other team has a chance.
And
right?
the other team gets the ball. I think that's how they do it in the NCAA.
No, the NCAA does CFL style where you get the ball on the 25-yard line.
Right, but then the other team gets the ball on the 25-yard line.
Yes.
So that's what
You'd
I'm
prefer
saying.
That?
So at least that way both teams get a chance to score.
Or how about if there's overtime in the championship game or in a playoff game for that matter, you play the whole quarter.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say. I'm okay with that. Play the whole quarter. That way clock management matters.
Yeah. Play the whole quarter. If you go, 3 and out, you punt because maybe, you have time to come back. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I understand in the regular season if they want to have one rules. I mean, look, the NHL has completely set of different rules for overtime in playoffs versus regular season.
Agreed, but
Right?
I mean, this is almost like settling a game via shootout.
I know.
Well, at least in a shootout, as bad as it is, both teams get the same number of shots.
Yeah, if you're a Falcons fan, when you lost the coin toss, your heart must have sank.
Right, and a game shouldn't be decided on a coin toss.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people this week were debating the coin toss and the same question you asked, did they blow it? Did they earn it? I always think about the same thing. And an old friend of ours, Gary,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like one of the most famous plays in hockey, right? Steve Smith scoring on his own net,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the Oilers were a major dynasty. They looked like they had already won the cup 2 years in a row, and they played the Flames, and it went to Game 7, and Steve Smith scored in his own net, and they lost to the Flames in the 7th game, and that ended up being the winning goal.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary always pointed out to me, he's like, first of all, if the Oilers were that good, how come it was Game 7? Second of all, if the Oilers were that good, they had a whole period to try to tie the game up after that, and they didn't. So, yeah, they made a mistake, but they still had time to recover, and they still had time to, to force overtime or win the game, and they couldn't. Same thing here with the Falcons. They screwed up, but the game was still in their hands. The defense still could have made a stop. I mean, how about that Edelman catch? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it seems like every Super Bowl there's one crazy catch.
Yeah. I mean, the Julio Jones catch on the sideline right before was sick.
Mm.
And the Edelman catch is just in disbelief. And I mean, I don't know if you saw, like, during the week, they had Edelman, like, they had some of the players mic'd up. And they showed them, like, after the game. Like, I saw this on, like, Tuesday. Edelman's mic'd up. And he catches the ball. And first of all, how good is that ref for coming in and saying it's a catch? Because anybody who's watching that game on TV, you saw the play, you're like, there's no way he caught that, right?
Right. But on the first replay, you knew right away that it was a catch.
And the ref comes right in and he signals, he pulls his hands in, he signals it's a catch. And we were watching, a whole bunch of us at this Super Bowl party, and I was like, what? That's no way that's a catch. And then, of course, they showed on the replay, and you see right away that it is. And Edelman, when he's mic'd up, he pops right up and he's like, I got that. And the defensive back is like, no way. And then, like, you hear the defensive back saying, there's no way you caught that. And then Edelman says, like, exactly, he goes, I swear to God, I caught it. Mm-hmm. And they're both looking up at the scoreboard. They're both looking up at the huge to see the replay. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, you see. And then Edelman's like, ah. And then, because that little bobble. And, right there. And why did they challenge? I don't understand why Atlanta challenged that play.
Well, first of all, they probably didn't find out that it was an actual catch until after he threw his challenge flag.
Oh,
because he threw his challenge flag pretty much right away.
I guess.
And I think he was thinking, even if I'm wrong, I wanna sort of have like a timeout here because.
But he had a timeout. If he wanted to use a timeout, he could have called a timeout.
Right. Well, this way he gets a timeout and maybe they overturn the call.
Yeah. I mean, I thought he threw the flag just it was stupid because anybody who watched the replay, like you said, I mean, it was obvious that it was a catch.
Right, but I don't think the coach had seen the replay when
Yeah.
he at the time that he threw the challenge flag.
But
and
they
and
needed-
if his assistant coaches up in the booth knew and didn't tell him quick enough or whatever it was, I don't
Yeah.
know what the situation was.
And you know what? You might see the replay and say he caught it, but there could be a million other angles that show that he didn't catch it because that ball bounced around 6 million ways, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they're like, look, let's take a chance. We have nothing to lose because the game could change on this call.
Right.
So good for Brady. Good for them. I was happy, Goodell had to hand him the trophy.
You mentioned I was not happy about that. I can't stand Bill Belichick and I can't stand the Patriots. But you mentioned Neil a few moments ago, and so obviously Neil had some great insight on our last episode. But Neil and I had been emailing back and forth, just the two of us, and you were not copied on some of these emails. So I want to read you something that Neil wrote to me before the Super Bowl.
Okay.
It says here, I feel like the Pats will try to create mismatches with their pass-catching running backs, both James White and Dion Lewis, which is exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't say that on our show.
No.
He sort of changed what he had written. Had he stuck to his guns and said what he wrote, he would have looked like a genius. In fact, he does look like a genius because he wrote this email before the game.
On our show, he said he thought LeGarrette Blount was going to have a big day, and the Patriots came out and they tried to establish the run with Blount. They tried, and he wasn't going anywhere. It was just not working. And then Dion Lewis actually went out of the game at some point in the fourth quarter. He got injured. I think he turned his ankle. And then it was all White. White was like their main man. He was doing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why, by the way, you can't take any New England Patriots in a fantasy draft because you never know which player is going to come up big on any given week.
Other than Brady. Yeah. Well, my strategy from 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
2
It
years
didn't.
ago,
I mean, it got you to the finals, but then
Yeah.
you lost.
I had Gronk and Brady, and they carried me all year, and then one bad game, and then you're finished.
Yeah.
So how did you enjoy the commercials?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The commercials actually were very underwhelming. So the first time I've ever gotten to see the American commercials live in over a decade.
For sure. Me too.
Maybe in my entire life, because I don't know how much football I used to watch before that.
Right.
And so I'm so focused, like when the play's ending and the commercial's coming up, usually I don't care. But now this game, I was so focused on, okay, what are we going to see? What are they going to show? What's the commercial for? And there were a bunch of commercials where I didn't even know what the commercial was for until like the very end of the commercial.
Most of them were for like website building.
Yeah. There was a Honda commercial that you didn't even know it was for Honda until the commercial was done. I don't even think they showed a car at all in the commercial.
That was the one with all the yearbook
grad
pictures.
photos. Yeah, the yearbook pictures.
It was well done, but like you said, who knew it was a car commercial?
Right. And there were a bunch of others. So I mean, to be honest, if you ask me which one was the best one, I don't even remember. They weren't like so overwhelming that they stuck in my mind.
Yeah, they weren't good. There was one that I liked. It wasn't even a good commercial, but I just liked the fact that they did it, which was the ghost of Spuds McKenzie.
I don't even remember seeing that.
So he was like a floating dog, and he was taking the guy everywhere. And
oh, okay, yes, I did see that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that dog died.
well, no, but he didn't. But I mean, or maybe he did. But like when I think back to the famous Super Bowl commercials of like when we used to see the commercials, there was so many with that Spuds McKenzie, right? So
That was not a bad commercial.
it was okay.
I'll give you that one.
But yeah, it was underwhelming, and it was fun. Actually, we were at a friend's, like I told you last week, and so all the we were all watching upstairs, but the kids were all watching TV downstairs. They were watching the game in another TV in another room in the basement. And Matthew told me that they watched on CTV because they were all trying to win the prizes.
Did anybody win?
No, because you had to actually watch and text in something that was on the screen like at that minute.
And someone told me at work who actually he did watch on, I think, CTV and intentionally, like it wasn't by accident.
Yeah.
And so he texted in, I think in the first quarter or the first time that thing came up.
Yeah.
And he got a reply saying you're not in the texting window. Like there was a glitch in the system. They eventually fixed the glitch.
Right.
But for the first quarter, or at least part of the first quarter, that contest wasn't even working.
Oh, wow. And it was amazing because we were texting literally seconds before the game started. You texted me like, we don't have the American feed yet. It still says CTV.
Right.
I'm like, me too. and literally they switched the feed at the last possible second.
They did. And then they switched it back to CTV right after the game ended. So the post-game show, you didn't get to see the American commercials either. The only chance, because I was focused on the game and the commercials, the only chance I had to relax was halftime. And I didn't care about halftime. I didn't care who the halftime show was or what they were going to do. I didn't care at all. So I get up, I'm walking around, I'm stretching my legs. The funny part is, I told you, the other people I was watching with, they don't really follow football. And so as soon as the halftime show started, all four of them ran to the screen and were focused on the screen like they were mesmerized.
The Lady
And
Gaga
I couldn't even
mesmerized
talk
them.
to them because they were so focused. And like, I didn't even care. It was the funniest thing. It was strange.
So the same thing with me. I had a good seat. I mean, we were all squished in where we were. I had a pretty good spot near the TV. And then when the halftime show started, I got up, I got some food. I started talking to someone. I talked to him during the whole halftime show. And I didn't even see 1 second of Lady Gaga. I didn't even see it literally for 1 second. And I have no regrets about that either. I heard she was great, but who cares?
The Skip and Josh Sports Show. They don't take your calls.
On to other things in the world of sports.
Well, the biggest thing that happened this week, forget about the Super Bowl. Everybody knows what the biggest thing was, and it was Thursday night. It was Duke, North Carolina.
Yes. And it's interesting because, first of all, you didn't text me for two reasons. One, because now you don't text me anymore. We don't text each other.
No, but I
during the week.
sent you a preemptive text.
Yes,
I was
but
like,
also,
are
you
you
weren't
watching
sure,
the game?
You weren't sure if I was going to watch the game live or record it, and you didn't want any spoilers. So I appreciate you not texting me.
I wanted to know if I was allowed to text.
Well, here's the thing. I did record the game because I was playing hockey, and I got home late, and I wanted to watch the game, but that meant I would have gone to bed at 2 a.m, which I can't function the next day if I go to bed at 2 a.m. So what I did was I fast forwarded until there were 8 minutes left in the game, because I saw that it was tied at that point. And I figured, okay, I can watch the last 8 minutes. It's a tie game. So let's see what happens. And funny enough, that was right around the time where Duke started to pull away and take a lead.
Right.
So I saw that there were like so many lead changes and a bunch of ties during the game. So clearly it was a good game. I didn't see the whole thing. I only saw the last 8 minutes, but clearly it was a good game. So I'm happy with the outcome, obviously.
Well, I mean, it was the most complete game Duke's played all year. Coach K said, the same afterwards. I saw a bunch of quotes. And I feel like I know I've been harping on this, and I've mentioned this in so many episodes. They had a lot of guys, and not everybody knows their role. And I feel like the rotation we saw is the rotation he's gonna go with the rest of the year, give or take here and there. But it's a bit of a lesser role for Matt Jones. It's maybe Frank Jackson in different situations, and it's kind of. Harry Giles is not going to start. He's going to be the second big man, and I think his playing time will be dictated about matchups or how he's doing in the game. And clearly Tatum is like the big guy out of the freshmen that's going to get the big minutes, and obviously well deserved because he's a bit of a monster.
Like you said, the team is now healthy finally.
Yeah.
For the first time, they have all their players back.
Yeah.
And they have the coach back, so that's quite important.
Yeah.
So the rotation that we saw, I think, is going to be the rotation going forward. Now the game was at Cameron, so obviously that's a bit of an advantage for Duke. Obviously Duke has to play North Carolina again later on this year at Chapel Hill. So that's going to be a tough test.
Yeah.
But I'm not concerned about Duke making the tournament or not, because there's going to be probably 6 teams from the ACC, if not more, that make it.
Right.
So Duke's going to be one of those teams for sure. Now, are they going to be a number 1 seed?
No.
Probably not. But that's okay.
They'd have to win the ACC tournament to be a number 1 seed.
And even then, because there's so many teams that have fewer losses than they do, so I don't even know if they'd be a number 1 seed.
So you said you couldn't stay up, so I stayed up actually to watch the second game.
Oh, the Oregon-UCLA game?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, I mean, it was a big night of sports, right? You had Duke, North Carolina.
Oh, that's true. That game started at 10, so it ended around midnight.
Yeah, and then there was also the Habs.
When I started watching, it was already like past midnight.
Right, and then the Habs were playing also, so like I was watching that. And Oregon UCLA was great. I mean, UCLA is going to be really tough in the tournament also. Like they're strong. They have this guy Lonzo Ball, who's like fantastic. Yeah.
He can hit threes from anywhere.
He can hit threes, he could drive. He's a bit of a complete player, he's projected top 3 in the draft, so
The UCLA Bruins, they're like the Falcons. In football, they score a lot, but they have no defense.
They have no defense, and they were playing at home, which was a huge home court advantage from the way it seemed, on TV. Seemed like the crowd was like really into it.
By the way, in that game, I don't know if you saw, they tried the cheerleaders tried to build that huge pyramid that they always do.
One of them fell over.
So she falls, which is not funny because it
No.
looks really painful. Then the guy that's taking her off the court, like into the locker room to get her treated, he's carrying her, and as he's running off the court, he falls and she falls again.
That prompts TSN to do top 10, dropping moments. Have you seen that one? Yeah, those are great.
I don't know if I saw that one specifically, but I mean, I felt so bad. Like, that's painful.
Of course, it's crazy. It's serious. You can get injured.
Anyway, apparently she's okay, which I don't know how, but I'm glad she's all right.
Yeah. So Duke's playing Clemson today, so
Yes.
hopefully it can keep up their momentum. What really struck me about the Duke team is, it's always the same Duke, North Carolina. And Jay Billis made a good point during the game. He's like, North Carolina is so good at developing big men. Think about all through the years, all the big men that they've had that have just destroyed us inside with their big physical presence. I mean, going back to before Duke was really good, like Brad Doherty, Sam Perkins, that era, but like even more recently, Sean May, and then back in the 90s, Montross, and like they always have like a dominant center, right?
And that guy that was
Tyler
on,
Hansborough.
yeah, that guy that was on the Raptors for a bit.
Yeah. So and now they're continuing it, right? Like they dominated the game inside, and Duke played their game, which is mostly shooting threes.
Yeah.
And that's become the Duke identity over the last 20 years, is always a big 3-point shooting team, right? We've always had of sharpshooters, all around. Sometimes when Duke doesn't have a good team, it's because all they do is shoot threes, which is not the case with this team. But what I like about this team is that the guys who hit threes, Kennard, Allen, a little bit Tatum, Frank Jackson, these guys are very, very dangerous at taking the ball, at driving and taking the ball to the basket. I mean, Grayson Allen is, I don't know if you realize, he is the most ridiculous dunker you'll ever see. People don't realize this about him. He is incredible. Frank Jackson, I saw highlights of him when he committed to Duke. The guy is an unbelievable athlete. And you see how deadly Kennard is when he takes the ball sort of into the key and he does these little ball fakes and stuff. He's so lethal at just putting up. When Kennard shoots, I always think it's going in, no matter where he shoots from.
Yeah.
Yeah. For threes,
and that's what makes them so effective, because you have to guard against them driving and you have to guard against them hitting a three. So you can't you have to hedge your bet sort of if you're guarding that guy.
Yeah, when he puts up a three, obviously you think it's going in, but I mean, reality, it's like 50% or whatever he's shooting from three, 40 something percent.
Right.
But when he takes the ball into the key, and he does these little hesitation, head fakes, ball fakes, he just finds a sliver of space to get his shot off. I always think it's going in.
Did you see who was at the game, by the way?
Leitner and Ferry.
And I think JJ Redick was there too.
Yeah,
no?
he was. They showed him. Yeah.
Yeah.
This morning, I Hate Christian Leitner was on. I watched it.
Oh, it was on again.
Yeah, it's great. I'm sure it's going to be on all the time leading up in the next month, leading up to March Madness.
There was another 30 for 30 that was on this week. I recorded. I haven't had a chance to watch yet. It's called This Was the XFL.
Oh, I heard about it, yeah.
It looks interesting. So, I'll let you know after I watch it.
Those are good. The documentaries are great. I told you I watched Catholics versus Convicts.
Yes, I like that one.
Yeah, it's good. Very good. Yeah. ESPN 30 for 30 does a great job.
By the way, speaking of ESPN, I know there are tons of websites out there, ESPN, TSN, Sportsnet, Fox Sports. There's a million more that I haven't even mentioned, CBS Sportsline. And you can go to any one of those for any information that you need, whether you want hockey scores, baseball scores, whatever kind of stats. But I have to tell you that I did some research, and ESPN.com is far and away better than all of the others.
For what?
Well, for example, I was trying to figure out the Canadiens' record with and without David Desharnais. And you think ESPN, they don't really focus on hockey that much, so you wouldn't go there as your first choice to find out hockey news. You'd either go to NHL.com or TSN.ca or maybe even the Montreal Canadiens website. But the thing is, all those other sites I just mentioned, sure, they tell you all the scores of all the games, And sure, they'll tell you David Desharnais stats, but there's no page that has it on the same grid, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to go to the player's game log. And so on ESPN.com, when you go to the player's game log, it'll show, if he played in the game, how many minutes he played, how many shots he took, but it will also show what the final score in that game was.
Oh.
So you can easily download that whole
And just sort
screen
it. Yeah.
and then sort it, whereas none of the other websites have that. And so I'm going to give big props to ESPN.com as being a superior website.
Hi there, Skip and Josh will be right back. To get in touch with them, you can send them an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. You can follow them on Twitter @skipandjosh, and you can visit their website at www.skipandjosh.com. And now, back to the show.
I like your segue into hockey.
Okay, well, that was just by accident.
So you mentioned David Desharnais. He's clearly on his way out. He's been scratched now, and I think finally the love affair between him and Therrien is over, and I think we're not going to see him. I mean, he's not going to play the rest of the year unless, there's other injuries. He's the odd man out right now. They called up 2 guys from St. John, and Desharnais didn't play. So
this was on my list of things to mention to you. So I was surprised to see that because you know better than me how much Therrien likes Desharnais.
But they interviewed Therrien about it. They asked him how come Desharnais was scratched, and he said, I don't have room for him at center right now, and I don't like what I see from him on the wing. So he's finally realized that the other guys that he's using are better.
They had to do something because they were on a 4-game losing streak.
They're on more than a 4-game losing streak. They're in a kind of free fall.
Right.
That's very similar to last year. It's just that they've managed to pick up points on the on the ties and the overtime losses, those kind of points, to keep them afloat. But they've lost something like, I forget the stat. They've only won something like 17 out of the last 40 games.
Yeah, since their 13-3 start, I think they're a 500 team.
They're on the same free fall as last year. And the difference is
that's not all Desharnais' fault.
No, none of it's his fault. There's something wrong with the team. I mean, whether it's the coach, whether it's the players, clearly the goalie is not doing his job. Like,
well, I saw the highlights from the Phoenix game, or they call it Arizona now.
Yeah, he was brutal.
Almost every goal he gave up was a brutal goal.
Yeah, he was brutal. And the game before that, they scored 2 goals, Colorado, right off the bat, and then they gave up.
And I was reading. I went online to read the Montreal Gazette, which I don't do very often.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's one journalist there, Brendan Kelly. It seems like he doesn't like the Canadians at all.
Oh.
Because he doesn't write any positive stories. At least I didn't read any positive stories from him. And the other thing I was noticing in the Gazette was that apparently Carey Price is not happy, and I don't know if it's because that time that Therrien pulled him in the middle of the game, or because of that incident in the Devils game where he had to punch, was it Palmieri? And none of the players came to his defense. I don't know what the reason is, but apparently Price isn't happy.
I don't think he's. I mean, look, there's a bunch of crackpots calling the radio station every day, and I hear them because I listen to the radio. They're like, Price is playing bad because he wants Therrien fired. So I'm going to tell all these complete idiots that if you think that's the case, you need to check yourself into a mental hospital. Because if Carey Price wants to get the coach fired, all he has to do is call Marc Bergevin, say, I want to meet you, go meet him in his office and say, look, I don't like this coach, it's him or me. That's all you have to do.
Well, last time that happened, they traded the goalie, and that was a mistake.
Well, him or me. I mean, but you can express that you don't like the coach. When you are a player of the stature of Carey Price, you could have say on a coach being fired, just like Sidney Crosby did in Pittsburgh more than once, right?
Mm.
So there's nothing wrong with it. LeBron James did it in the NBA last year,
Yeah, I think I don't think it happens in hockey as much as it happens in basketball.
It's much more of a team sport. But I mean, look, Carey Price is not playing well. Obviously, there's something wrong. You want my take on it? Why he's not playing well? I think 100% it's lack of confidence. You know as well as I do, a goalie is only as good as how confident they are. And it's funny because the Habs fans are really pointing out that Carey Price is playing badly, like as if he's the only goalie that goes through stretches where he's playing badly. Do you know how bad Henrik Lundqvist was for like a month this year?
Oh yeah, I know. He
Horrible.
wasn't playing.
Horrible.
They were using their backup,
Yeah.
and the backup happened to be playing well.
Now, Do you think Pecorine is a good goalie?
Normally, yes.
Yeah. You know how bad he was almost the whole entire season last year?
Mm.
Terrible.
Yeah, every goalie goes through slumps. Agreed.
So, I mean, the classic case of all the goalies losing their confidence is Jim Carrey, right?
Yeah, he won the Vezina, didn't he, or the Calder?
Yeah, he won the Vezina. 2 years later, the guy's out of hockey, right? Like, he can't stop anything.
Yeah.
So, I really think it's confidence, and he's fighting the puck. He's not seeing it. One of the guys on the Habs post game made a really insightful comment, saying, "Carey Price, his style. You know what describes his style of play is limited. Not limited. Limited's not the right word. Very efficient physical actions." He doesn't move a lot, right?
Mm-hmm,
He makes everything look easy, and he gets himself in the right position, and he's a mathematical style goalie. He makes himself big, he gets in the right spot, he tries to stop, cover as much of the net as he can. But he's not flying around the crease, he's not moving around, he's not like, he's very, very efficient with his physical movements. And that's not the Price that we've seen. I mean, look at those goals against Arizona. He's all over the place.
Yeah, there was one where he was completely looking in the wrong direction.
God,
I couldn't believe it. I had to rewind that. And I'm like, did that really just happen?
Yeah, it's crazy. So look, there's nothing they can do. What can they do? They can't they're not going to get a new goalie. They're not going to use Montoya. They're going with Carey Price, and they're stuck with him. So they need to figure out a way to get him back on track.
Yeah. And there are some people out there who are suggesting that the coach should be fired. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The coach gets too much blame when the team loses, and he gets too much credit when the team wins. So you want to fire the coach, that's fine. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference.
The same people that say they want to fire the coach are the same people that were saying the coach is doing a great job when they got off to the hot start this year and last year.
Yeah.
And look at their roster. It's not great. It's good. They have a good team. They have a pretty good team, and they have a pretty good record. Like
they are what their record says they are.
Yeah, they are what they are. And can they miss the playoffs? Yes, they're capable of losing 7 games in a row and falling into like the playoff hunt. Can they make it all the way to the finals? Yes, of course they can. Carey Price could go on such a roll that no one will be able to score.
It's unlikely that they're going to miss the playoffs. The division that they're in is not very strong.
Yeah.
So they will make the playoffs. How far they're going to go in the playoffs remains to be seen.
Well, in the NHL playoffs, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. It also depends on the matchup they have.
Yeah. Well, the matchup's not going to be easy because, let's say they finish first in the division, they're going to end up playing like the one of those 2 wild cards, which are going to be it's going to be a strong team.
Well, the wild cards are both going to come from the other division, I think.
Unless, it's going to be, Philadelphia or the Rangers. It's not going to be easy.
No, so they could go out in the first round.
Yeah, they could. So I just want to continue about the coach. So of course, this week that all the Fire Terrien rumors intensified because
of course because they lost 4 games in a row.
No, because Claude Julien got fired by the Bruins.
I was going to mention the whole Claude Julien thing.
Yeah. So because he got fired, and because there's this unwritten rule, well, it probably is written somewhere. So it's such a rule that they have to hire a French-speaking coach. So I mean, Julien seems like I would say the odds right now are 50-50 that he'll be the Habs' next coach. Doesn't mean Terry's going to get fired this year, but I would say there's a very good chance that he'll be the next coach of the Habs.
Well, first of all, I don't think that Julien deserved to be fired. Let me just say that. The Bruins, I think, are just 1 spot out of a playoff spot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but they missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, 2 years in a row.
But I blame the Bruins struggles on the general manager. Ever since Sweeney took over as GM, he has made a lot of questionable moves, in my opinion.
Well, he traded Dougie Hamilton for nothing, and then they've been struggling since they traded Dougie Hamilton. They're struggling to find who's going to replace Chara as their big stud on defense. Well, let me tell you, newsflash, you had him. His name was Dougie Hamilton.
They also, as much as you might hate him, they got rid of Milan Lucic for nothing.
Yeah.
And that guy, again, you might not like him, but he certainly helped the Bruins win the Stanley Cup.
Well, he was part of their identity, right? The big
Yeah.
bad Bruins. That's him. He's part of what makes them tick.
So I mean, when you strip the roster of some key players, it's understandable the team's going to struggle. Again, it's not the coach's fault.
Well, we also didn't mention the worst move of all, which happened before this, which was when they traded Tyler Seguin.
Right. Oh, thank you for reminding me.
You know, they had the number 2 draft pick. They have drafted basically an offensive stud, a guy that really, in a limited role, really helped them win the Stanley Cup that year.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't a full-time player, but when he played in the playoffs, he scored some big goals and had some big shifts.
I didn't understand that trade at the time that
And
it happened.
they traded him because, you know, they didn't like how he behaved off the ice. And
every team's got a few guys who don't behave well off the ice. You can live with it.
When teams trade guys because of off-ice stuff, I hate it, because it's giving up. You can take the hard road, or you can take the easy road. The easy road is like, we don't want to deal with this. He's a distraction. Get rid of him. The hard road, and the thing that's difficult to do and teams don't want to do it, is like, let's take this guy. Let's work with him. Let's make him better. Let's fix his life. Let's be involved in the players' lives. Let's be an organization, you know? And
I think
and they didn't
ever since he went to Dallas, he's been even better than he was with Boston.
They're an offensive team, Dallas, and he's an offensive player. Dallas still isn't a great team, but he still is a great offensive player. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas up until this year has been a perennial playoff contender.
Yeah.
Perennial Stanley Cup contender. This year, obviously, they're struggling, and I don't know why. But I don't blame the Bruins' struggles on Claude Julien. So, Julien's gonna have another job very soon.
Oh yeah, there's supposedly teams that said they would fire their coach to hire Julien.
I'm surprised actually he doesn't already have a job.
They wanted to fire Julien so many times, and they couldn't because they were always winning. You know, the year that they won the cup, they were saying, you know what, if he hadn't won the cup that year, they would have fired him, which is ridiculous.
He's not gonna. I mean, especially with an expansion team coming up next year. He's not going
to take that job.
He might, but my point is,
Vegas?
he's not going to have trouble finding a job. That's my point.
No, he's not going to have trouble finding a job.
I don't know. Living in Vegas isn't such the worst thing.
I know, but you don't want to coach that expansion team. It's going to be garbage. That's not.
It is good. Yeah, but there's also good job security, because it's not like you're expected to win.
He's not worried about job security. They're still paying him for this contract. He's got tons of money. He wants to go into a good situation, where a team that he can win with.
Anyway, whether he's going to be the next Canadiens coach or not, I don't know. I don't know that it's going to make a difference. I don't think the Canadiens should make a coaching change now. I'm not a huge fan of Therrien, but I don't blame him for their struggles. The team is what the team is, and their record is indicative of how good they are.
But the situation where Therrien could get fired is the same kind of reason why Julien got fired, is that, it might not be the coach's fault, but sometimes you need to make a change. Sometimes you need to make a change. You can't get rid of 20 players, so you get rid of one guy. And you saw what happened last year with the Canadiens. They got off to a crazy start. They completely tanked. They were the worst team in the league for 2/3 of the year. Literally the worst team in the league. And that says something. And they're on such a similar path this year that, one big losing streak, and I think he's in hot water. I think Bergevin said he's going to stick with Therrien to the end, but I think now there's the possibility that he could get fired.
Right, because if Bergevin doesn't fire Therrien, then Bergevin himself might get fired.
Yeah, exactly.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is back.
Can we talk about the NBA for a few seconds? We don't often talk about
No, not much. I mean, I follow it. I don't know how much you follow the NBA, but I follow it a lot.
So, two things. One you know about and one you may not. Tonight is the first night where you've got the NBA on ABC.
No, it started last week.
It started last week?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tonight you've got Golden State at OKC.
And it's a huge game tonight. It's Durant's return to OKC.
And it's interesting. You had mentioned this on our on our last episode of 2016, where the NBA starts putting basketball games.
Yep.
Sorry, ABC starts putting basketball games on Saturday nights. You had said that they start doing this after March Madness, but they actually start right after the NFL season ends, or right before the NFL season ends if it started last week.
It's good. I like the Saturday night games because they usually put some nice matchups on. So
yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is the whole Charles Oakley New York Knicks incident.
I knew you would talk about this.
I mean, I saw that. I couldn't actually believe what I was seeing, and they showed it over and over and over again, and I read as much about it as I could. And
I still don't know who's who to believe, but I can tell you. Are you like favoring Dolan or Oakley? Like, do you believe one over the other? Like,
I'm going to side with Oakley on this. I don't know how they can say to a player who was on the team and had such a big impact with the team in their history that you can't come back into Madison Square Garden. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, they banned him, but I mean, apparently him and Dolan already had a falling out before this, and Dolan stopped inviting him to Knicks games, and then he bought his own tickets, which is what happened here.
Right, and if someone pays for a ticket, he should be allowed to sit in his seat.
Well, they're saying he was drunk and abusive before the security guards came, and I don't even believe that. His exact quote is the security guards came and he told them, I've only been sitting here for 4 minutes.
I've heard things about Dolan even before this incident. He has, ever since the LA Clippers were sold, Dolan is the worst owner in the NBA.
Well, I mean, his behavior and the Knicks' behavior after this whole incident, really, they're trying to spin it to make it seem like Oakley was in the wrong, and everything they do makes them look like the idiots. Right. So I don't know if you heard the interview with Dolan on the Michael Kay on the Yes Network from yesterday. So first of all, he owns part of that network, right? So like the guy is interviewing his employer, and so it's basically a puff piece, and Dolan's going on and saying basically like propaganda. You know, he's trying to make himself look like the good guy and make Oakley look like the bad guy, and I don't think one person believes it.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at the other things that Dolan has done. Even before this, he hired Phil Jackson and gave him millions upon millions of dollars to do what? I still don't even know what Phil Jackson's role is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, they wanted to hire Phil. When they hired Phil Jackson, everybody thought it was a great move. But it turns out he's not a good was a really great coach, but he's a really lousy GM.
Listen, you don't need to be an expert NBA person to know that when your team is on the decline, you don't re-sign a guy like Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
That's the time when you're rebuilding, you trade away guys like Carmelo Anthony and you get young players or draft picks or both. You don't go spending millions of dollars on Carmelo Anthony when, you're drafting Porzingis and all these other guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the one that drafted Porzingis, and he got lambasted when they drafted him, and he turned out to be vindicated because Porzingis is a player.
Yes,
but now they have to build their team around him. They can't just the Knicks are a laughingstock. The Knicks are a complete laughingstock. Phil Jackson already was a laughingstock, and now this whole business with Charles Oakley just makes it all worse.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe you wanted to talk about the NBA.
You're kidding me? Boy, are you bugging me, man? I'm gonna nail. Ooh, I'm getting bugged now. Whoa, man.
Do you have what bugs me this week?
I do actually. So, is the NBA All-Star game next week?
Next week? Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and I think the NHL All-Star game was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
The reason I mention that is what bugs me is the way the media refers to the All-Star break. So for as long as I've been growing up, it was always the All-Star game or maybe even the All-Star weekend. But now I hear all these people saying All-Star, he's going to All-Star.
What?
Yeah, like he's going to All-Star. And they don't say break or game. And you can't just say he's going to All-Star or he's in All-Star because that's not grammatically correct.
But who said this? I've never heard this.
Oh, I've heard it on the radio. I've heard it on television. I've heard all kinds of different people say it, both for the NHL and the NBA.
Was this a Toronto thing?
And you can't just say a sentence where he's going to All-Star. You have to say he's going to the All-Star game, or he's going to the All-Star skills competition, or he's going to be taking part or having an All-Star break. Because if you just say All-Star, it's not grammatically correct, and it bugs the hell out of me.
I have to look this up because I've never heard this, and
I don't know
if people are saying this, it's ridiculous.
I don't know if you'll be able to find it because it's not written. It's something that people have said either on radio or television.
And if it is written, there's probably like an editor that will like fix it.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy.
So, but I've heard so many people, and this started even a couple of years ago. I heard it once or twice, but now this year I've heard it quite a bit. And because both the NBA and the NHL All-Star games are not far from each other in terms of the calendar, I've heard so many reporters on television and on radio refer it as just plain All-Star.
That's ridiculous. If I had heard it, it would bug me as well.
So I've heard it a bunch of times.
Well, great chatting with you this week, Cubby.
Yes.
I'll just remind our listeners to check out our website, skipandjosh.com. I'm always posting, new content there, links that we like and things pertinent to the show. And, please, if you're on iTunes, give us a review and give us a like. And we'll keep these shows coming.
Absolutely, yes. Great show, and looking forward to the next one already.
All right, thanks. Talk to you next week.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.